You're listening to the MLS Fantasy Insider, bringing you weekly tips, tricks, and advice for the official MLS fantasy game.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's show. Super excited to have you guys with us tonight and for our very special guest who we'll be introducing shortly. As I'm sure some of you all are well aware of, working on doing our social things right now. First, to see Gene is here, so it's time to do it.
Here we go.
And
recording in progress.
There we go. The recording in progress. That is Gene's thing. We love it. So right. Okay, getting the social posted right now. Let's see here. I have to change my @s for Blue Sky versus the Twitters to get all that posted out there. All right. There we go. So hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's show. If you enjoy content about MLS Fantasy and the official MLS Fantasy game, I don't think there are any unofficial ones really around anymore unless they're homebrew things, but I'm sure this works for that too. So if you just like MLS Fantasy info, welcome. You found the right place. Like and subscribe, hit the notification button, and more importantly, share it. Share this resource, share your experiences to help grow our community. It just makes it so much more fun to get everybody involved. If you out in social media land, in Twitter X or over at Blue Sky, we do have the social media that has been shared. Please do retweet that. Interact as well. I mean, I always put little comments out there to people. Let us know how you did. Just sort of share little questions, things like that. So definitely do interact, and again, help the algorithm out and let it get into people's faces, and so they can find and discover MLS Fantasy. I got Google Analytics recently and was just kind of seeing how people find the show, and there's surprisingly more sort of people finding it just naturally without going through one of the links than I would kind of expect that people do. I just assume that most people see the links and come back and go from there, but just some more just natural people finding the show. And so yeah, the retweets and shares definitely help when people do that. So all right, so happy to have everybody here. We're going to go ahead and get started because we've got John with us and it's going to be super fun. So let's do the intro. Hello and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider, our preview of round 11 of the 2025 MLS Fantasy season. This episode is brought to you by the Cincinnati Bicycle Shop. Our prices are so good, they're upside down. No, wait, sorry. Actually brought to you by the amazing MLS Fantasy Insider Patreons. It's because of you that we are able to keep this project going. You can find out more about our Patreon project over at patreon.com/MLSFI. I'm your host, Reid Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my partner in fantasy. Welcome back, Ashley Savage. We'd also like to welcome our very special guest, John Muller, soccer writer, formerly with MLS and The Athletic, and currently building a soccer startup that will be announced more later this week. How are you all doing?
I'm doing great, and your ad read voice is amazing. I want, like, if our show, it's like you're our guy.
Happy to do what I can to add a little bit in there, put my old degree to use. That'll be super handy right there. So it all works. Well, we are super stoked to have John with us. He's been a member of our Discord community for a few years now. Drops some definitely helpful advice from time to time in the various chat channels. Has given us
and plenty of unhelpful advice too.
Well, but sometimes he gives us the good scoops and things like that. So helpful, unhelpful. That's how it goes. But really excited to have John here, especially with the wealth of soccer experience that he has. But one interesting thing that I always like to talk about when we have like professionals, like we've had a few players, we've had people from MLS, but people like John on there is like, how much does this actual knowledge translate to fantasy success? And it's always fun. So as we've been doing, we'll have the little kickoff with the interview right here. And John, let's just start out with some of the easy one. And for those of you who don't know you, tell us more about your background and how you got into soccer writing and fantasy.
Yeah, sure. So it's kind of a long and like convoluted story that we'll skip most of, but Long story short, I got into soccer like pretty late. You know, I was like most American kids. I like played until I was 10 or 11, and then I kind of like forgot about it for a while, right? And then in my 20s, I lived in Latin America for a long time. And so like I was always a big sports guy, and suddenly this was the only sport to play or watch or talk about. So I got super into soccer. I became a big Barcelona fan. And the reason I became a Barcelona fan was like when I watched them, they looked different than any other soccer team that I'd seen, right? And they made the game like make sense in ways that I didn't know soccer could from watching other leagues, not naming any names like the Dallas Burn, who I watched as a kid. Um, but but I got really curious about like what they were doing differently and how the game worked, and I spent like literally a decade just like watching and reading everything that I could get my hands on, just like really trying to figure out how soccer worked. And you know, for a long time, this was just kind of a hobby. And then, as hobbies do, sometimes it became more of a passion project, and I started like writing blogs here and there. And then I got into MLS. You know, I'd gone as a kid to MLS games, but I got into MLS around like 2017 because my brother moved to New York, where I was going to law school at the time, and he wanted to like go to soccer games together. So I was like, cool, like yeah, let's go to NYCFC games together. And so we did, and like you know, we became fans, and I started a blog with some friends of mine called The Outfield. They're still active. They do really good stuff on NYCFC, and so yeah, and I was also involved with American Soccer Analysis, which I assume a lot of fantasy folks know. You know, they do amazing data analytics work, and everybody there is so smart, and you know, a lot of like PhDs in statistics or data sciences or the hard sciences, and so they taught me a lot about like how soccer stats work, and they taught me how to code, and they taught me, you know, how to work with soccer data, and so I was doing all this kind of for fun. And then I graduated law school. I went to work for a big law firm in New York City. And if you know anything about big law in New York, you'll understand why I walked away very quickly. It was terrible. I hated it. And when the pandemic hit, I just decided like there are better things to do with my life than work 20 hours a day for terrible causes. And I started writing about soccer just because that was kind of what I was doing for fun. And I talked to my buddy Ryan O'Hanlon, who writes for ESPN now. At the time, I think he had just left The Ringer. He was working on a book called Net Gains, which is very good for anybody who's into that soccer data writing. Like Ryan's book is one of the best. And he was doing a newsletter. And I thought, oh, like that's cool. Like newsletters give you editorial freedom and they let you like write the stuff that you're really interested in, even if it's not the stuff that like newspaper editors might want. And so I started a newsletter called Space Space Space. And I did a lot of like data and tactics nerd stuff like that you couldn't really find in other places. And a lot of readers really responded to it. And like I was able to scrape out a living at that. And I did it for like a year. And then Tom Warville, who was the Athletics data guy early on when they started their soccer vertical in London, went to work for RB Leipzig. And when he did, he called me. He was like, "Hey, like you're doing kind of the same stuff. Do you want to come work for the Athletic?" So I did. I worked for the Athletic for about 3 years, covering European soccer. Again, doing a lot of data work, a lot of tactics work, all the nerd stuff that I love because it helps me like understand how soccer works better. I wrote about that for European audiences. And when I left the Athletic last year, I came back to the league that I knew and loved and got to spend more time watching MLS for the first time in a while, you know, and one of the first things that I did as I like kind of got back into MLS was join the fantasy Discord and like talk to you guys because one weird thing about MLS relative to other leagues, I think, is just that like there's so few sickos who really follow the whole league. You know what I mean? Like everybody
Yeah,
knows the
yeah, I
players
know
on
what you
their team.
mean.
Yes.
Yeah, but like the fantasy people,
We
like
know.
they know MLS and like if you want to really immerse yourself in a league, like I think the fantasy community is really the best way to do it.
Yeah,
Does
no,
that answer your question? That was a really roundabout answer.
no, it
I
does.
was
It
gonna-
does.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know all those little bits about your history as well. But no, you are right. That is definitely it's why I say that I think fantasy is such a great gateway for new players into leagues because it really is like here's the whole thing. It's like here's people you might be interested in, not just because maybe they're playing against your team, but this is a great player. So watch this game, and now you're interested in it because he's on your fantasy team. And so it sort of
Yeah.
opens your mind to some of the other games that you may not normally do. So no, that's yes, because we fall into the fantasy sickos section there. So I kind of already asked this one about how you got into. So that's been a couple of years with fantasy, right?
So I actually played back when I was first getting into MLS, like seriously in
Okay.
2017, 18, and then that was back when like Bobby and Doyle had a show and like fantasy MLS was
Yeah.
becoming a thing. And then it just like
Mm-hmm.
the league just sort of like abandoned it for a while, but you guys kept
Mm-hmm.
the flame going. So I knew like when I wanted to play fantasy MLS again, like this was the place to be.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely been. So I was going to say you've been through the whole evolution of the journey. That's right there. Well, I have a question related to that in just a second, but first I want to say, because we don't always get this kind of soccer analytical pedigree joining us on the show. This is a hybrid question about how people who know soccer bridge that gap between analyzing soccer and playing fantasy. And so a great thing is the transfer window just closed, and we've seen all kinds of articles about here's the winners, here's the losers, here's like all the impact. But how about for fantasy? And so from your point of view, just a quick little thought. I know which teams or players are you excited most about, or who have won from a fantasy perspective with the window, and who's just kind of missed the mark?
So, we were talking about this a little bit before the show, and I think like the two most fantasy relevant players probably who moved in this window are number one, Daniel Gazdag, like everybody already knows because he's already been active for the Crew, and obviously he was a super fantasy relevant player at the Union for a long time. But one of the interesting questions in like soccer data analytics or just like soccer clubs in general is when you take a player from one club to another club, especially if they transfer leagues, but even like within MLS, if you're moving from Philadelphia Union to the Columbus Crew, who are two very different styles of team, like it's very difficult to predict, how that transfer is going to go. It's difficult to predict what the new role is going to look like for the player.
Mm-hmm.
So we've already got like a little bit of a preview of what Gaz is going to do in Columbus, and I think that he's going to probably be an even better fantasy prospect there than he was with the Union. But the other one that I'm really excited about is Julian Gressel, who just finalized his move to Minnesota today. And he, for strange reasons, fell out of favor at Inter Miami, even after playing, I think he was the second most minutes of any Miami player last season on the team that set the MLS points record after Busquets. And then this year he just like couldn't get on the field to save his life. So he's gone to Minnesota. He gets.
But isn't this some deja vu with him? Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like this is the case with him at some point on every team. He's a journeyman at this point.
He is a journeyman, and I think there are a couple reasons for that. One is like he's 30 years old now. He's making $1 million a year, right? He's getting that veteran salary, and so like under an MLS budget, unless that guy making $1 million a year is like a cornerstone of your team, then you probably can't have that like on your payroll. And I think that's the main reason why Miami decided that once he wasn't a tactical fit for Mascherano's system, like they needed to move him on. Sure, that makes sense. I think at Minnesota he's going to be an outstanding fit, right? The one thing that Julian Gressel does better than anybody in MLS is put in crosses and play those balls in behind that Tani and Yeboah feast on. And I think that if he's playing that right wingback role where Bongi has been kind of played out of position for a long time, like that's just such a natural fit for me. Like I think that's a really, really good thing, like for actual soccer and also for fantasy soccer.
And of course, the other thing he does very well is playing out of position. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets classified when he makes the move over there.
He's versatile. Like, he can play in midfield as well, and I'm sure we'll see some of that. But I think right wing back is the best role for him for sure.
So like the one time where those things can change is when we have these sort of mid-season adjustments. So we'll see where that goes. Well, to go back to kind of this question that I alluded to a little bit ago, you've seen the full, or not the full at least, you've seen a good large chunk of the evolution of this fantasy game. And one thing that I don't think many people knew at all is prior to you leaving The Athletic, you were actually working on an article about the history of fantasy MLS, and you chatted with several of the people involved with the show, involved in the fantasy community, and I'm sure others from around the league as well. And so I'm just curious, since we never got to see the article that could have been, just what was it about? What were you hoping to touch on? Like what enticed you to want to write more about this game?
Yeah, so I was bummed the timing of this article. Like I did all the reporting for it, and then I left the Athletic like the next week. It was like right when I was gonna write this thing, it didn't come together. But I got to have a lot of interesting conversations, and really like I was just doing it because like this was a subject that interested me. And to the Athletic's credit, they gave me a lot of freedom to just like write about whatever I thought was interesting, and usually readers found it interesting too. Fantasy MLS might have been a tough sell, right? I don't know. It's a small audience compared to the European stuff that I usually wrote about, but that was part of what intrigued me
Yeah.
is that like fantasy Premier League is a huge deal, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
like such a big draw. It engages fans with the Premier League who might not otherwise be super into it. And to me, like especially in American sports, like we've got the example of like NFL fantasy. Everybody plays that, right? Fantasy baseball, like people love this stuff. American
Mhm.
sports fans love this stuff, and it never made sense to me that like MLS just couldn't quite figure out how to make this an important part of their fan outreach. And so, yeah, I talked to a lot of people. I talked to you, Reed, but I also talked to like Ben Bear, who kind of helped run it at MLS for a
Mm-hmm.
while. I talked to some folks in the league office. I talked to other folks, who are super involved in the fantasy MLS community. And I had a few questions that were kind of interesting to me. Number one was just like, who's running this thing? Like who's making the decisions? Like who who cares about this? And I can tell you
Mhm.
it's sad, but like the answer was not the league office. Like they did not care. In fact, they were like kind of
Mhm.
confused about why I cared about it. As this like guy who writes about the Premier League most of the time, like why was I writing about fantasy MLS? And I told them like, look, dude, like fantasy Premier League is huge. Why is fantasy MLS not like super important to you? Why don't you care about this? And I think it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, maybe it was one vice president's baby and they left, and then another vice president just decided like, the numbers aren't there, like I'm
Mhm.
not going to push it anymore, whatever, like the internal office politics or something like that. At the time, they were pushing the pick'em game. That was the new thing last year. I don't know if they're even doing that this year.
Well, they
But it's
send push notifications for it, and it just grinds my gears every single time.
Yeah, like to me, that's
Mhm.
not interesting. Like fantasy MLS is super interesting and fun. Although I think, and this was one of the like things that I was kind of trying to get to the bottom of is like my personal feeling is that the game design is fantastic for sickos and terrible for casual fans, right? Like it takes
Yeah.
so much time to be good at this game and to like monitor lineups and to be juggling all the rolling lockout stuff. And I
Mhm.
think for casuals who just want to like play a little bit of MLS fantasy but not spend, you know, 18 hours per weekend doing this, like it's not ideal. And so I talked to some folks about kind of the history of that decision and like how did they come to it. And I think the answer was the inmates were running the asylum, right? Like every time they wanted to know how to design the game, they would go to the sickos, the people who really cared about the game,
I
and
mean,
they'd be
yeah.
like, "What's fun for you?" Right? And so they built a game that's fun for you. And so I don't know. Like I would love it if there was some fantasy game that could kind of engage both groups, right, and still be as fun
Mhm.
as I find this game right now.
Yeah, and I think we've definitely been open to that because I know, I mean, I've been involved in those conversations too. We've collected feedback from our listeners to help contribute to those conversations that we send on to Skylar and Ben when he was here, and other people. Just
Mhm.
sort of like, hey, here's some stuff for the community, and we never tried to hide that. Yeah, we do know that these are the people who are going to be more hardcore. But I know we do always try to have, at least on our show, we always try to have some entrance for people who aren't as deep into it, to try to help peel back some of the layers of like, here's some people and all that. And so I'm really glad that we do that. But yeah, it's a little disheartening to hear that it's like the inmates running the show, but at least it's still here. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
thing, that at
yeah.
least they don't
Yeah.
not care about enough to be like, yeah, well, just get rid of that thing, or just let Reed and Skylar do whatever they want to do, and just
Yeah, I mean, at this point,
just
it's like
run
it's
with it.
not really costing them anything, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
no prize money. It's can't cost that much to run the game, so they just like let it go, and you guys like build the community around it. And to me, like
Mhm.
that's the essence of a fantasy game is like building community and like having friends that
Yeah.
you talk about your leagues and your teams with, and like
Mhm.
that's a great thing that MLS should really lean into, in my opinion.
I wonder if it's more of a black eye to not have a fantasy league in American sports really at this point. Maybe that's some
I
saving some
mean,
face.
let's think about that, shall we?
Yeah.
It's a work in
Yeah.
progress. It's a work in progress.
I know.
But no, that's super cool. It would have been very fun to see that. I would have been interested to see if there was any kind of uptick from that, to see more eyes coming onto it, and if that would have changed any. But it's still here. We're still happy to play this. And so, two more fantasy focused questions for you back on topic. We've asked everybody who's here. So the first one is, what is your general approach to building a fantasy lineup?
My general approach to building fantasy lineup is pick good home players, right? It's not that hard.
Sure.
Like you can nerd out on fantasy all you want, but like if you just pick the most expensive players who are at home that week, like you're 90% of the way there to building a good team, honestly. And I love to overthink it, but if I just did that, I probably would do better than I do right now.
Sure.
That's fair. That's fair. The over tinkering. That's what I always get to everybody.
Yeah, I mean the deal with MLS, and I assume anybody who plays fantasy knows this, is that like MLS has the highest home advantage of any major soccer league in the world.
Mhm.
Home
Mhm.
teams score 40% more goals than away teams, and since most of the fantasy scoring revolves around goal contributions, like yeah, you want the team that's going to score a lot of goals. Now, it is interesting that like bonus points, I think, are not as venue dependent as goal contributions, and so you can game that, and a lot of what really makes fantasy fun, if you want to dig into the details, is like trying to pick the differentials, right? Trying to pick the away players who will do well this week, the people who are a little bit off people's radar, and
Yep.
you can dig into expected numbers or whatever like stats you want to try to find those hidden gems. But if you don't want to overthink it, like you can do it in 30 seconds by picking the expensive.
That's right. You can. It's not hard. Just don't be intimidated by being able to change your lineup every week. It's not a big deal. And so that leads us into our last question, which is, as I said, we do try to keep help out there for newer players. So, what advice would you give to new players who are starting down their fantasy journey in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess this is redundant on this podcast, but like the number one thing is get in the Discord, right? Talk to people and
Yeah.
like be part of the community. And not only is it fun, but like I guess I would say the hardest part of playing this game is knowing who's hurt, right?
Yep,
Like
yep.
there are 30
Sure.
teams in MLS, and like there are constantly players who are maybe coming back from injury, and there's not a ton of reporting around it, and the injury reports aren't reliable, and like teams might be rotating because of CCC or just whatever. Like just knowing who's going to play this weekend is like a full-time job, unless you're in the Discord and you can just ask people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
a helpful way to
Hit
start.
the mega reference. There it is. Yep.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, John. We're so excited to get your insights going into the rest of the show, and letting you do your little bit of your plug whenever you would like, but definitely at the end of the show. So looking forward to hearing about that. So, okay, well, let's get into our recap of this past round 10, and we're excited to have Ashley back with us. So let's just go ahead and let you kick things off, Ashley. How did your team do, and just what are some of your takeaways from this past round?
Well, first of all, I said this off air. I'll say it again. I missed you, Reid. I was gone for 2 straight weeks, which is uncommon for me. So it's nice to be back. I appreciate you giving me the space to leave and welcoming me back with open arms. Getting a good partnership would. I had a pretty decent round this round, which I think I've complained enough for the whole season in these first 10 weeks, so I'll try to tone it down. But I got an 87 and I moved up several hundred spots because I'm so far out of that top 100 that we aim for. But I still felt frustrated. As I think I go through this, a lot of people will relate. I did pick up Mukhtar when I saw that Ojeda wasn't starting. So thank you, Orlando. I struggled to think that Ojeda would have produced the 19 points that Mukhtar did. So that was nice. And then again, something I've talked about all season. I want to believe in Denis Bouanga. I love me some Denis Bouanga, but Denis Bouanga was not playing good enough soccer for these first couple weeks. But man, did he play great soccer on Sunday. 17 points and a missed penalty. So, could have broken through into the 20s, and I had him as well. So that was really great. I bet against my own team, and I picked up Jordi Mihailovic, and he hit double digits, only double digit midfielder for me. So besides Hani. So generally a good round for me. One that didn't make me talk about quitting, and I've talked about quitting every other round so far this season. So that felt nice to just not think about quitting. I think the number one surprise, and all of us can add little things to this as well, was just that Nashville beatdown. My husband made a good point to me that I don't really think played into it, but that was BJ Callahan versus Greg Berhalter. And so I kind of like to think that was an aspect just because I'm a drama queen, but I don't think it was. I think Chicago's just not that great on the road, and Nashville is finally starting to click offensively. But I did like that aspect to it. It could have made a nice little subplot.
I'm pretty sure those guys love each other. Like, this was not some.
Nope, that's not part of my story. This was like a brother fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like a
right on.
little
Yeah.
brother trying to one up
Yeah,
the
even
big
if they
brother.
love each
That's
other.
what I like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love and hate is a fine line, though. We all need to remember that. I
Especially
was
among
surprised. Exactly. I was surprised to see no Ojeda, and I just keep getting caught out with this. I'm still surprised that Vancouver is this good.
Heck
And
yeah.
not just this good in league, this good in CCC. Like, they're doing it in CCC and they're doing it in MLS, and they completely rotated. I was talking in Discord, looking at that rotated Vancouver lineup. Is anyone looking at Minnesota keeper or Minnesota defense? Like, this lineup is so rotated, and they put 3 goals past them on the road. I'm just continually impressed with them from a fantasy perspective. They have so many viable options every week, defensive, midfield, and striker. Brian White seems to finally be becoming the Brian White everyone thought he would be at his other teams. And it's just so fun. It's just fun to see. Some disappointments for me were the Charlotte defense and offense. I went with Pep Biel this week, who I've liked off and on. He sucked. Their defense sucked. That was a little surprising. They'd done so well at home, kind of like John was talking about, the home teams. They'd been producing very well at home. They did not produce well at home this week against the New England side that's kind of meh. So that was a bad bet on my end. And then, not to rub some salt in it, but Evander, when everyone loves you, you do not love us back. That when some people love you, you love them. But when we all put that armband on you, my guy, I guess, he was a pass or two away from some of those contributions. And obviously, Denke did well, but that's not who I was looking at. So that was a little frustrating. Also, and I'll get into this as we do picks, I have some thoughts about San Diego's offense that I'm starting to pick up on. And like I said, I'll get into that, but I was a little disappointed with them. And then my last little general takeaway, because I talked about everything else, is that I no longer will be talked into until proven otherwise that LA Galaxy is a reliable fantasy team. I'm not here for the peck. I don't care that Painstill's back. I just cannot honestly, I think their most productive fantasy player is Christian Ramirez, which, man, who was on the podcast Reid earlier in this season and was talking about, and someone will remember that it was them and at me, and I apologize already for forgetting who it was, about how Christian Ramirez could be a sneaky fantasy viable pick for LA Galaxy this season. And I was like, I don't know. I think it was Priest. I hope I'm right, because
it sounds like something Priest or maybe Matt would say with his
it
LA
wasn't
connection.
Wojo.
So
it wasn't. I don't think. No, it wasn't Pollard. But I can't. I mean, they're winless, and I know that's not fantasy relevant, but it is fantasy relevant. And so that's just surprising to me. So yeah.
All right, John, how'd you do? What are your takeaways?
Yeah, so Ashley, I'm moving the other direction from you right now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll meet you in the middle, bud.
Yeah. So I when the first Champions League window closed a couple weeks ago, I was 19th. Now I'm 170th. I've had a couple of really pretty dire
it's okay,
weeks.
man.
It happens. But it's I do this to myself because at the beginning of the week I build a very responsible team, and then Saturday comes and I have a couple beers while watching the game, and then I start gambling like crazy, right? I just I do crazy stuff. So this week, right? So first of all, I think I went on tilt when Bruno Damiani, who was like my budget sleeper, my guy who I was really excited about, didn't start, right? So I picked up Tyburivo, who got 2 points, came
Yeah.
off for like 60th minute, right? Like did nothing. That's fine. He was on the bench. But then, then the Orlando lineup dropped, and Ojeda wasn't starting, and I had actually had Pasalic. How do you say his name? Pasalic.
This isn't the place to ask that. You said it
Okay.
fine.
So like I had him in my lineup all week, but I looked at that
Okay.
lineup and I was like, I don't know, like if he's gonna
Ah.
put up with no Ojeda. So
Mhm.
I dropped him, and I did something that fantasy players should never do, which is I tripled down on San Diego's attack.
Ah,
I, I
Ouch.
I am a little bit of an aesthete when it comes to soccer, and I love the way that San Diego play ball. Like
Yeah.
it reminds me of
Mhm.
Bayer Leverkusen, who are one of my favorite teams to watch
Yes.
in Europe right now. And I obviously like Chucky and Dreyer are good players. And Valakari has been like kind of this nice budget pick, midfielder
Yep.
playing out of position as a false nine and like puts up good expected numbers. Picked him over Paslic. She got 2 points, and that's the story of my week right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Carlos Cornell did fine in goal. That was pretty much my only
Yeah.
like decent pick. Buanga, of course, but we had Buanga. So yeah, I'm sitting at 170th right now and trying to fight my way back up.
You got a
understandable.
double coming up. You can do it.
That's right.
That's right. Oh yeah, we got another double coming up. That's always fun. A nice little I was gonna say a unique thing for MLS fantasy. It happens from time to time in Premier League fantasy, but it's not regular enough. And I do love it when I see the guys who I'm involved with who play Premier League fantasy when the doubles come in. It's all like and I'm like, yeah, I got this. Don't worry. It's old hat. It's old hat. We're all good. Well, for myself, it was okay. Average week, I'd kind of say. The biggest thing was I didn't have Mukhtar, and that's what really hit my lineup. I had him in for a hot minute, but then I waffled back and forth when I was thinking about like they haven't been hitting, and I mean Chicago's been I don't know, and so I ended up putting in Ojeda, and then I was busy this weekend. We had a big yard sale with my wife's in-laws, and so did well at the yard sale. Missed the Orlando lineup when I was doing that, so did not see that Ojeda was not there. So would have had 90 had I stuck with Mukhtar. Ended up with 73 right there at the end. Lost all my head-to-heads. It was pretty brutal. And I just missed a couple of key little players. Had Bawanga, that was great. Did that switch. Had Denke on the bench. I felt really good about the Cincinnati game, but also meant I had Evander as my captain, and so that was my dual. I'm going to double up there with my surprises and have Denke and Evander. Denke it was a pleasant surprise. I mean, that's why he's here. That's why since he bought him, he's been doing great things with hold up. He's shown that he is willing to do some of the assists. He's a shooter though. He wants the ball, so he will also definitely not pass the ball or will take the ball. But he gets a few little key passes from time to time. But that's definitely the value that he had, and that was a good matchup against Sporting Kansas City. I really want to see take advantage of. But super disappointed that Evander couldn't make it work. Which, for those of us who remember him last year, he did have a couple of dud games. So it's not like all abandon Evander. We'll get more to that later. But definitely surprised that he wasn't right. But surprised that he didn't do better against the Sporting Kansas City team. Then also the other big surprise that I have is just Charlotte just dropping that clean sheet to New England on. I'm not going to say a questionable goal. It was definitely a solid goal, but you cannot convince me that was a shot. That was really more like some sort of a pass across. I don't know, but it went in, and that's fine. So fine there, but disappointing because I did have Charlotte as part of a keeperoo this week, so that did not work well for me. Disappointments. He did fine with points. I'm gonna add Quinn Sullivan to my disappointments list because he just didn't generate the bonus points I really thought that he was capable of in this last game after having some nice double digit key passes. I mean, he did fine with his points, but I just hoped he got 6. But I'd hope for a little bit more with some of the production that he was showing. I'm not off him. That was definitely a good game. He's got some good games coming up, but I just a little bit disappointed in some of the points I had there for him. Going down my list.
Can I jump in here for a second and ask you a question?
You sure can.
what is a key pass in this game? Because nobody will tell me. It's driving me crazy.
So
is it passes into the box? Is it passes in the final third? Like I literally have no idea.
So I can only give you a half answer for this because with the new Sport Tech scoring, their definitions aren't published. Opta published their definitions, so I can really only give you.
I know what an Opta key pass is.
Right. I can really only give you the Opta definition of what a key
it's
pass
definitely
is.
Not that. It is not passes that set up shots. I can tell you that.
So that's really all that we have. I don't know if it's setting up shots. I don't know if it's in certain areas of the goal. I don't know if it's setting up shots on target or whatever it ends up actually being. But
that makes it really hard to predict how many key passes a player's gonna get, right? Like,
it does.
Quinn had one this weekend. Why? I don't know.
I know, and that's why he's come off of games where he's had double digits, where he's been flirting with 2 or 3 points each round, and so for him to get 0 against DC United, which has a defense I do not rate at all, was missing their best player, and he comes away with 6 points, which I'm like, okay, he got the assist, that's fine, but I'm disappointed because it just seems like there should have been more there for him. So, but yeah, no, I unfortunately cannot define what those actually are.
I would love to. I wish we could answer that for you, John.
I will tell you what, I have access to data. At some point, I will sit down and do a little research project. I'm going to figure out what this is. And
thank you.
All right.
Backwards engineer the definitions right there. For some of the general takeaways, I'll just wrap it with here before I touch on some of the fantastic scores I have seen in chat right now. We always talk about some of these teams we're betting against. Eli Redpath has an article where he's talking about some of those matchups each week that he looks at. We talk about some of the usual suspects there. Montreal is one. They're still definitely on my list there. I'm going to be adding New York Red Bull, New York City FC, Toronto. Maybe they're one step above, always bet against, but they're definitely teams that I do find questionable and would be definitely up for considering maybe the best player from those match. That Toronto New York City game ending in just 1-0, just not a lot happening there. Toronto had been doing okay with defense. New York City struggling a little bit with offense. They still got the goal, so just kind of underwhelming. And you know what I've been saying about Red Bull for a while now. Do not want to take Forsberg. There's just not oftentimes options there to want to get. They got the 1-0 against Montreal, but we're betting against Montreal. So those are definitely some of the takeaways from this was underscored right there for me. Don't sleep on Luna. Is definitely, he came back. I tried to put that announcement out there on Twitter because he got the red card. We mentioned last week on the show that might get rescinded. It absolutely did. And I think he's got some good bonus numbers. He's been getting some goal actions. And I think he's hitting that stride at the right time for a good run of games where he could pay off with some points right there. Same thing though, Jordan Mihailovic, he is also on a great run. I mean, he is north of 11 million. So he's starting to get pushed into Messi territory with points, with his cost, but he's been getting some great consistent numbers right there. And I think he's got some good games coming out there, but he's at that premium price now, so you have to look at your budget. And then finally, the other takeaway I'll go with is mentioned last week some of the Portland conundrum of where oftentimes I like Portland, I like this matchup, let's see what's going on, but who do I take? Who do I take with Portland? That old school, as we've said, who've been around for a while. They had that Houston Dynamo syndrome where they had 3 forwards who were all each person was sometimes goals or sometimes not. And that's what we saw. We saw a couple of players really come through with points. So Anthony had 4 assists or 3 assists or something crazy like that. And
Anthony's outscoring DaCosta in fantasy right now.
Right, and DaCosta got some points. Now, I think one of them had 12, one of them had 8. So those would have been solid scores for a lot of us with some of our midfielders. But that's what we're talking about. It's they're sharing points right there, which if they're going to generate that volume of points, that's fantastic. But that is definitely what I was talking about last week. That's a good illustration right there. Other than that, I absolutely want to go to our chat real quick where people were sharing some of their scores that we had here. Particularly want to point out where, let's see here. We had Meg on the show last week and she was giving some advice, and we had Chanyo in chat who says, thanks to Meg, he moved from overall rank 77 up to overall rank 15 with a score of 109. So fantastic score right there. It's
Dang.
very good.
Okay.
Lots of 80s,
Wow.
lots of 90-point scores right in the chat. And so people did absolutely fantastic. I think if you scored in the 70s, if you're on the more competitive side, maybe the more sicko side, if you scored in the 70s, you might have had a mixed bag. You might have seen a drop. You might have stayed about even. That was probably about the average you score for people who are like trying hard or competitively the sicko part of the game.
Yeah.
If you 80s and 90s, I think you definitely saw some positive numbers right there. It seems where a lot of good results were right there. People seem to be disappointed with the 70s. But as we talked about the show last week, everyone's different. Everyone's playing for something else. So if you're like, man, I got 60s and I thought I had a great week. Awesome. I am stoked that you did well with that. So
You
everyone's
stay in that headspace, sunshine.
Exactly.
You did.
Exactly. So this is just what we're seeing. I'd love to talk to some of the guys and we can maybe even kind of break down like what the average scores are for people in different brackets of like, hey, top 100, top 500, top 1,000, that kind of thing. I think that would be kind of fun for people to be able to see just kind of how you compare against a broader swatch of the meta. So I think that'd be pretty good.
We know some people that love to math.
Oh, I think we could definitely get some people in the Discord to figure that one out right there. Probably an easy ask. Maybe John with his soccer analysis.
Someone's already
coding.
doing that, I bet.
I'm sure they are. We're just getting to share. So those are some of the takeaways that we have. Would love to hear your takeaways from this round. Just put those in the comments below or respond to a post on social media and just see how you did. It's always fun to hear the successes and also the disappointments from the community. That's why we're all here to talk about that. But with hope, we'll be able to help you find some more successes in the next round. And that's going to be coming up right after this when we talk about our player picks. Okay, let me get the social prepped. Well, you're not on Twitter anymore, are you, John? Is that right?
No, I'm not. Just Blue Sky.
Okay. Try to tag people when I can.
Yeah, appreciate it. No big deal though.
Social media is out. Let me change the little segment thing. Oops. Click. Round 11. Let's see here. Yeah, people used to fuss at me. They still fuss at me sometimes in the comments about how they could never tell where we were in the show. And I try to put the little chapters now on YouTube, but I have that little round 11 targets and preview that I try to remember to change.
Don't want people fuss at you, Reid.
You know,
so hard.
Sometimes it's mean, but sometimes they make good points, and so when they make good points, I try to be helpful. So
I try to take that same approach. It's hard though.
All right. Oh, Dan, back-to-back weeks where your captain went off injured. That is rough.
Oh, that sucks.
Beal. Ooh, yeah, that's definitely a rough one.
Oh, did he go off injured? Well, I'm mad at him, so I don't feel bad.
All right, let's see here. Okay, we got all that changed up. So social is out, and we will hit our second segment. Hello and welcome back. We're talking about our player targets going into round 11. But first, let's do a quick little bit of housekeeping here. Games start on Saturday, May 3rd at 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Wojo's Atlanta United versus Nashville SC. As far as Autoroo planning for you goes, this is your usual Apple TV kind of starting lineup. We got the 2:45. We've got another 4:30 as two early games. Then our 7:30s, 8:30s, 10:30s, 9:30s, all that good stuff. One note, San Diego FC and FC Dallas, their game starts at 9:15 instead of 9:30, so keep an eye on that. And then we have two games on Sunday, May 4th. May the 4th be with you. That's what's coming up right there. We have New York City FC versus My FC Cincinnati and Sporting Kansas City versus LA Galaxy on that Sunday. So Autoroos should be very easy to work out with that kind of lineup right there. But please do keep in mind, while we have no buys or no double game weeks this round, there are some other competitions you are going to want to keep an eye on, particularly CONCACAF Champions Cup. If you didn't know, Vancouver came out ahead of Miami last week when Miami traveled to Vancouver 2-0. So Miami is in the back seat right now. They have got to come out with everything. So expect that to be a very tough game where Miami is the home team and Vancouver is coming to them. That is on Wednesday that those two teams will be playing. And then they do have a Saturday game. They're not playing on Sunday for the regular MLS League. But not to overlook, the Canadian Champions League is also playing on Wednesday. Of note, we have Toronto and Montreal playing. Now, both of those teams are home for their MLS game, so keep an eye on them as well for potential rotations and see how you might want to handle those. And then just the first quick notice, we'll definitely get into this more next week, but U.S. Open Cup begins next week, the week of May 6th and 7th, so keep an eye on how there may be starting some rotations or just how that may impact MLS teams. So we'll definitely get more to you next week when that is more in play. But in the meantime, to keep an eye on all of these sort of potential injuries or different change-ups that may happen, be sure to head over to the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord, head over to the Fantasy Tools section, and check out the Mega Reference, where we have the community-curated project to help keep you up to date. As John mentioned, it's hard to find some of this injury information, but the community does a very good job at trying to do what they can right there in the Mega Reference. Okay, that was the quick little wrap up just to help make sure those things are on people's radar. Let's start talking about what I know is everyone's favorite part of the show, and that is the player targets going into round 11, starting as always with keepers and defenders. John, who are you looking at?
Yeah, so keepers, I'm doing Schulte to Fry, which I think is going to be a very popular keeperoo for most people this week. I do think maybe I would not do this on goalkeepers, but I might do it on defenders. I was talking about a strategy with a member of the Discord today who had some NYCFC players picked in defense and had a bunch of Seattle guys on his bench, and I thought that was weird, right? Seattle plays late; they play at 9:30. They said, well, like the some of the best early matchups kind of overlap with that Seattle game, and what I think is interesting there is you can do a sort of like, I don't know, is there a name for this, but like a semi-roo, right? You can pick, you can put a Vancouver player on your bench, right?
Yeah.
You can have a Seattle player in your starting lineup, and if Vancouver has a clean sheet at halftime, that is like their odds of getting a clean sheet for the game are so much higher than anybody's are going to be pre-game, right?
Sure.
So at that point, scrub your Seattle player, and if the clean sheet doesn't work out, then take your NYCFC player. So really, you've got like 3 players in those 2 slots by doing that little hour-long overlap. That might be way too much managing for 9-10 o'clock at night, whatever time zone you're in. I don't know. It's something fun you could do if you wanted to. I'm not that adventurous. I'm doing something very easy. I'm taking Kevin Long from Toronto as a cheap pick against New England's terrible attack. I'll have him on my bench. I'll have Farsi. I think everybody's going to have Mo Farsi. I'm going to have Kim Ki-hee or some other Seattle defender. And I'll probably have Ryan Hollingshead because he has spectacular attacking numbers for LAFC. Even though I don't really trust their defense, Houston's attack is not too scary. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Last slot is Kieran Sargent, just the eternal scrub. I love him.
Absolutely. I don't think there's definitely not an official name for that, but I think that is one of the best candidates for like a double switcheroo that I think we could say of where you're sort of like getting into the meta of when you want to activate what your switcheroo option is going to be. So and forever, no one should listen to Jason Wiskovich. There is no such thing as a triple switcheroo. So, but perhaps that could be a double switcheroo. So, Ashley, what about you?
I also like the Schulte to Fry. It was what jumped out at me, and it made me both happy and frustrated to see that it jumped out at everybody else. Most others, I guess I should say. Hollingshead was one of the first on my team. I like that matchup. I like him. As Blaine always says, he's the best right back in the league. I think he's a left back now, though, isn't he? Left back in the league.
but still very good.
Whatever he does, he's the best at it, according to Blaine, who I miss dearly. I'm not really on Farsi. I understand why, and I like the thought behind it. He hasn't hit when I've had him, and so now he and I will take a break. I am honestly, even with the CCC, I'm still looking at what Vancouver puts out for that defensive lineup. I think the RSL is a good traveling team, but I think that they don't often spread that offense around a lot. I could see, depending on what lineup comes out, I could see Vancouver doing well at home. I think I'm just trying to remind myself that they're a team I need to be betting on because I haven't always bet on them. And so that's something that I just want to see. It's definitely lineup dependent, but I want to see. I'm also going to pick a Seattle defender. Right now I have Kosa Rienzi. Sawyer, actually, my son got to meet him last game. And so that's kind of just an emotional pick. I like how he gets up into the attack if he's starting. There's been some comebacks from injuries with Alex Roldan and things like that. So he might not be in there. He also might be in the starting lineup, but in a midfield spot. So it's just something to watch. Jackson Reagan will definitely
You like him
be
better in that midfield spot?
I do like him better in that midfield spot, yeah. With the injuries, Seattle's switched almost very consistently, but not exclusively to a 3-back, right? So it should be Yamar, Nuhu, and Kim Kihi. It could be Jonathan Bell. I don't think it will be. I think Kim has done enough to kind of lock that down. It also could be Kim Kihi, Yamar, J Bell, and then Nuhu on the wing. We haven't seen that yet, but it's something I heard that they have been doing in training, but I don't know why they would kind of mess with a good thing. But there's enough cheap options in Seattle defense, which hasn't always been the case this time of year in previous seasons. So I think that, lineup dependent, it's a pretty good, you should have, a couple of options. And then I'm still sticking with Kai Wegner. I know it's a road game. I hear it, but I still like him offensively. I don't think not having Gazeg hurts him. He still just contributes so much with corners and set pieces that I try not to do too many road players, but he is one that this week I'm just kind of not off because Montreal is not the greatest. So they're definitely better at home. But he's in my lineup right now. So, and I love the Kieran Sargent shout because he's also my scrub.
We talked earlier about fantasy relevant players who moved in the transfer window, and one that we didn't touch on was Willie Agata, who we were saying before the show. Like I think he's going to be a really interesting player at RSL.
Yep.
I'm already off Vancouver defenders just because I'm poor. I can't afford them.
Right. Not even Tate. Not even cute little Tate Johnson.
I might take Tate if he starts, but
I love him.
But I will say, if Agata is there and he's trained and he's starting, like I would be a little bit wary, especially with the CCC. Like there's a lot of factors with Vancouver.
John, I want to say you're right because that is my instinct too. But bless them, they have. I would have thought the same thing this week. I literally looked at that lineup at Minnesota, who is a good home team. They're second in the West, Minnesota.
Yep.
And I thought, my goodness, this is where they go off the rails, Vancouver. And they absolutely didn't. Pedro Vita had the game of his life. They contributed. They honestly should have had a shutout on the. So
they're shockingly good.
I do agree with you, but I think it might be foolish. It's gotta come apart at some point. They gotta start, evening out in some capacities. So, but it's just too much soccer. They gotta go all the way to Miami this week. But I don't know. Like I said, I think you're right, but I also think we might be wrong.
Fair enough.
We're just gonna have to add Tate to your list of all these players you're gonna have some sort of secret fantasy geek out over if you ever get to meet them. So it's gonna be
he's just so adorable. He looks like he could be my kid. I'm not even that old.
Well, exactly. It's like Lennon's already there. You're gonna have Tate. I mean, Breck Shea's forever on the list right there. I mean, so it's all that kind of
Breck
stuff.
Shea.
Just pulling that one out from right there, Ashley's list. I think Schulte and Fry are going to be the absolute chalk for this round. I question if Schulte should be, though. I mean, Columbus has had like a run of no clean sheets, just allowing a goal, a goal, a goal. Charlotte's got offensive power as well. We usually look at them for defense, but I mean they've got some potency there. So I'm not sure if that's going to be as for sure, but that's part of why it's a keeperoo, why it's on the front end of the keeperoo as well. Some other names I've seen that I at least wanted to touch on because I understand why people are going down this road. I see some people looking at Johnson, and I think that's because Toronto has had several clean sheets recently. But Toronto is not strong, and they are playing this midweek Canadian game, so keep an eye on them for that. Plus, they are going up against New England, which that's playing into why you're probably picking them as well. They have the weird goal last week, haven't really scored a lot of open run, but they're starting to get a little bit more chemistry, so that could be an opportunity where just one slips in, maybe a 1-1, maybe a 1-0 in their favor, but we'll see. But
I'm going to say, Reid, you just sold me on Sean Johnson. I'm switching.
It could be.
I'm serious. Like the Revs offense, like, yes, they put up a few goals lately, but they have the worst expected goals, second worst expected goals after, I think, what is it, the Galaxy?
Probably.
No, it's actually after Toronto. Toronto has the worst expected
goals.
There we
go. 0-0 coming in that game.
Yeah, I mean, Saturday afternoon games are always boring, right? So I will take Sean Johnson.
There we go. Like, I get it. I get why people are doing with that. I've also seen Willis in some lineups that have gone online, and that's betting against Atlanta. We'll see. They let in a lot of goals last week, so I'm just not sure if that's the best bet to go with the Nashville defense. The big question, Miami or Vancouver, I mean, we touched on that some already. What's the rotation going to be? Both of those teams have a lot to play for in this game. Usually you probably see less rotation on the goalkeeper side, but just looking at if there's full rotations, lineup rotations right there, what's that going to impact with the expected goal number? So that seems a little risky for me. I think you mentioned Wagner earlier, Ashley. I think Philly's got a great shot as a road clean sheet chance against Montreal, midweek game with the Canadians League, a team we're betting against, haven't really been great at scoring. They haven't allowed goals that often. I mean, they don't often allow more than a goal, but we're looking at defense here. So I think that's a good shout for a potential away clean sheet. Then I've also seen some people put in Stuver or Galese there, and I totally get where your mind might be there. Minnesota struggled a little bit on the attack. That's a good home game for Austin. Orlando, that one is strangely a little bit more questionable for me. Orlando's been on a great run of clean sheets. No doubt right there. If you had an Orlando defender in your team, totally get that. Chicago is better at home. Chicago has Kuipers, has Gutierrez. I mean, they've got some people who can score, and I could definitely see that being a potential, at least getting a goal there for Chicago. They're not fantastic, though. So I definitely understand why you might lean towards an Orlando. For me, I think that's more of a defender play than really part of your goalkeeper-roo right there. 8:30 is kind of a weird time. You could definitely make it work with the early games or the Sunday games. But personally, I'm not looking for for goalkeepers from the Sunday game. So 8:30 is kind of a weird time slot there. As far as defenders go, just match them up. That's match up with your keeper and your Aru. That takes care of two of them right there. Then look at those usual suspects. Wagner, maybe you're going to go with Orlando. Maybe you're going to go with some of these other teams that we've mentioned here. Makes sense for all of them. I don't think this is a week for Orshano. I think he's been doing okay. He's not doing the bust outs.
When
like I
has
think
there been
work.
a week?
Well, he's been doing okay. Like, he's come away with like 6 points or something,
He
which
got
is
a 6. He's the most expensive defender.
correct. But how many defenders have we picked and they've not gotten their clean sheet and they've given us a 2? So I mean,
Freeman got 14 points this week, and to start the season, he was 4.0.
Well, Orishano came off my bench with 6 points, and I was happy for it.
I came off my bench too. It was the first time I picked him up all year, and I was just like,
So,
what are you doing, guys?
so regardless, we agree, not the round for Orishano. Previous rounds may vary, but this round, not the round for Orishano. So I think, but I which is weird though, because I said I don't want to keep her from next round. Celentano, I think, is actually a potentially, like, I could get why you'd want to have Celentano because New York City FC's not been that great, but I mean, maybe you throw him in there. I just think you're better off just probably with a different Cincinnati player. So we'll get into that coming up. I'm going to chat real quick. Yeah, no one much difference there. Let's see here. Yeah, Orlando having a sneaky run. That's why I said, but they're on the road, and as John mentioned, pick the home players, go with their home field advantage is so real in MLS. Let's stop talking about midfielders though. Where I've had a rough time myself here. But Ashley, who are you looking at?
I am mad at midfielders lately, and honestly, it seems like they're mad at me back. Just because I feel like he deserves it, and I don't dislike the matchup. I do have Honey this week. Um, I'm not trying to bet against Atlanta. I don't ever feel crazy confident in that. Um, but the numbers suggest it could go okay. Uh, I'm also gonna keep another road person. John's gonna have it with me by the end of this, but I'm keeping Jordy Mihailovic this week, going to DC United, one of the worst defensive teams, um, Pogba or not. And then I want Anthony or DaCosta again, road. Um, I think I prefer Anthony. I also DaCosta got hurt right before he got subbed out. I don't know how legitimate that was, or if it was just coincidental. Um, and then on the other side, I also think Evander deserves another try. Um, and then my last spot, I wanted to give to Dryer. I've liked him most of the season, and I know this has been a conversation in Discord today, but it was a conversation I had completely separately and was happy to see it pop up in Discord as well. I think Chucky Lozano coming back from injury has point nerfed Dryer a bit. I really like Chucky Lozano. He's in the game as a striker, right? Right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
I haven't picked him up. But I do think that his general presence is um kind of causing those points to spread around and not everything flow through Dryer. Um Angel Gomez is not the same player as Chucky is. And so when he was playing for him, um, I think just so much more of the play was coming through Dryer. So I think this is a good matchup for him. FC Dallas is a generally poor defensive team. Um, they have a lot of injuries and they've been very rotated. They haven't put out a lot of the same lineups lately. But I just wonder if there's not a better choice is Espinoza a better choice than Dryer this week with that home matchup for him. Um, if Albert Rusnak is healthy and starting again with the great production he's had at the start of the season, is he a better option at home? So it's just something that I'm kind of keeping my eye on as I've went with him for a couple rounds since Chuki's been back and not seen that point production. As anyone who listens to me knows, I don't dive deeper than that into the stats. So there might be a more valid explanation for it. But what I'm seeing when I've watched some of the games and stuff too is that it seems like some points are getting pulled from him with Chucky being back and healthy. So that's where I'm settling right now. So
Sure, John.
Yeah, so I agree with you about Chucky nerfing Dryer a little bit, right? I
yeah.
think Dryer had like 0 shot creating actions 2 weeks ago, maybe 2 last week. He came off at 67 2 weeks ago, but like
Yeah.
he used to be the guy, right?
Yeah.
When Chucky was out, he was the guy. Everything flowed through him, and like the easiest way to pick fantasy players is pick the guy who gets all the attacking from touches, who gets in the box, who's going to take your set pieces, who's going to take your penalties. If you got somebody who does all those things, like that's a no brainer. So Dryer was the guy for a while, and I guess I'm just sort of emotionally attached to him now. I pick him every week, but like I
There's
agree.
nothing wrong with that, John.
Next week I will probably not pick Dryer. This week,
Yeah.
however, FC Dallas, not only are they a bad defense, but they're different kinds of bad defense, right? And FC Dallas is a low possession team. They're a low field tilt team, right? And San Diego is the opposite of that. So Dallas is going to let San Diego into their third. And yes, Chucky might take some of the offense away, but like Dryer is going to be doing a lot of passing in and around the box, in and around the final third. I don't know what a key pass is, but I think he's going to have a lot of them, right?
I hope so.
Whatever it is, he's going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, his expected goal contribution numbers are outstanding as well. And like, I don't think that is too much of a concern, even with Chucky back. I also have Espinoza, though. I think that, another guy who I love because, he's not necessarily the guy, but San Jose has the best attack in MLS right now. And Espinoza does so much crossing that he's getting the key pass bonus points. He's getting the cross bonus points. He's getting a ton of expected assists, and like he's an easy pick for me when he's at home. Rusnak, I don't know if he's going to be back this week, but that's another automatic if he's at home. Like obviously you start him. And then my other guy, I've got Evander on the bench. I went against my own rule. I took this one away player. NYCFC's defense is bad. Evander's the guy. I'll take that flyer. But in my starting lineup, I've got Zinkernagel from Chicago, who his expected goal contribution numbers are, on par with Georgie, who you've got, but he's playing at home, right? 40% more goals. Take the home guy. And so, yeah, I think he's maybe a little bit underappreciated in fantasy terms right now. So yeah, it's not a very exciting midfield for me, but Zinkernagel, I guess, would be the guy I would recommend there.
Yeah, I've seen people make comments about this in chat today. How people were more excited about forwards this week than people were about midfielders, and I've even seen some lineups that were only running 3 midfielders, which doesn't tend to be the lineup I favor because of the offensive points. But I could maybe definitely see someone who's throwing maybe a midfielder on the bench this week to work. And like you were saying with Evander, I think that makes sense for what you could make work with your fantasy lineup. But I definitely understand. I saw a comment in chat where some people have all away midfielders, and just looking through the lineup of games,
kind of do.
I get it. I absolutely understand. And I think you all have already touched on the most promising home players there. Rusnek definitely has that asterisk next to him for like, is he going to play? Is he going to start? How many minutes is he going to get? Is he going to have that feedback there?
If
Espinoza.
he starts, I think he gets pulled early. Maybe not before the 60, but I don't think he's not going to. I would be very surprised if he went full 90.
Which makes me question wanting to have him. It seems more like a bench play, but I would rather have a bench play that's going to go a full 90 to see what
He's
they're
expensive too. He's expensive and he's
play.
the latest Saturday game. So
absolutely right there. Espinoza, yeah, like you said, John, just that's an easy add into the team. I think I mentioned Luna early on. Depending on who Vancouver trots out, I think that could be someone you consider that's going to be very highly dependent upon the rotation that they have. And I definitely agree with the Evander shout out. Like I think he's still worth looking at. He had 4 shots. He had 4 key passes, so he was generating some stuff. Everything was through Dinke. But you've got to imagine that after that big explosion last week, New York City FC is really going to be focused on him as well, splitting the attention. We did also see Obina Nwobodo come back on in the second half for Cincinnati. So if he comes back on as a starter, that's definitely going to be some help for Cincinnati. Miazga got subbed off in the second half, so he's building back up to a full 90. And so if that defense is going to be solid and able to keep the ball into that final third, I think it's going to give more advantages to Evander. But we'll see. Having him on the bench may be the best play for how you want to handle that. Otherwise, like I said, I think you guys have touched on everyone who we need to mention there this week. It'll be interesting to see what Team Ranchinator comes out with their differentials to see who they're looking at with midfield. Going through chat real quick, let's see here. I see an Almiron shout out there from Eric. I mean, I get that.
Sure. I
mentioned that I wasn't sure about a Willis goalkeeper shout. Nashville a little bit questionable there. It's just not been hitting. I know Latte's been out. He's not been hitting, and so I don't think Almiron makes my top 5, even as a bench play. I mean, I think I'd much rather go with Cincinnati, Portland, somebody like that.
He does have a good home scoring streak lately,
True.
But that was with Latte healthy.
And I get it, and I definitely get it. I still think that I like the other matchups better with some of the consistency home and away that I've seen from some of those other players. But home is real, but I see the line of thought for.
I love
Yeah.
Miggy, but I haven't touched him all season.
Yeah.
I've only done a
The
couple.
only two weeks I picked him up, he scored, and then I was like, it's too good, I'm gonna drop him.
Yeah,
that's
but
fair.
At least
Yeah.
one of those was a penalty, right? Like you can't.
Yes.
You can't
No,
take that.
they were.
Oh, no.
Was it?
I think
Not
one of
when
them
I
was a
had him,
penalty.
I don't think.
No?
Maybe.
Okay,
Well,
no.
honestly,
lucky
John,
you.
I'm not.
I just lean on
doesn't-
Mojo.
He's
Yeah.
not getting in the box. He's not playing a lot of balls into the box. Like he's just he's not the
Yeah.
guy right now
Yeah.
because Atlanta just doesn't have one. They're just a mess right now.
They have a
Unfortunately.
couple kind of guys and not a guy.
Yeah.
The last one I'll put on there is just a question mark for Heel. I know we talked about it being very
Mhm.
questionable. Again, I don't think he doesn't make the top 5. I think if you go with him, maybe that's the differential that's going on right there against
He's
potentially
scoring, right?
potentially. Well, he's got a couple of open. Most of his goals are not open field. He's got the one last week again. I'm going to put that asterisk next to of was it a shot? I'm not sure.
He'll never tell.
So, right, he'll never tell, but it doesn't matter because it was a goal. But a lot of that's some of what does Toronto rotate. I could see if that's someone like, hey, this is a rotated Toronto defense. I don't know. Let's roll the dice. Too rich for my blood.
Quinn Sullivan could get a shout as well if you're gonna throw road defenses against or road offenses against kind of crappy Canadian defenses. I don't,
Yeah,
he didn't
I
have a
can.
great round this last round, but
I think he could definitely be a contender for maybe a 5th spot for me. I think I'd be okay if I just had Wagner of rolling with that. I don't know if I need him, depending on what some of these other players have with their potential. But yeah, I could definitely follow that logic as well. Well, let's follow the logic over down to talking about forwards, which people have been much more excited about. John, who are you looking at?
Well, let's see. So, again, does Messi start? I don't know if he does. easy captain. Bouanga, on a roll. He's playing bad Houston defense. Put him in your lineup. That's easy for me. My third right now is Joseph, but he came off at halftime last game, right? And I don't know what that was about. So I need I need the chat to give me the injury report because this is the only way I follow these things. If Joseph's not available and I can squeeze the budget for it, obviously Ranga's also a good pick. And there are others. I love Chucky, although I'm really worried about doubling on San Diego after last week's disaster.
it's a big bet. That's a big bet.
Yeah. This week is not the week because of CCC, but at some point, Luis Suarez is going to be like a sleeper pick, right? Like he's going to be a sneaky good.
I guess, yeah.
He's. I mean, look, the man is struggling out there. His knees are shot. He's 38
I know.
years old, but
Bless his heart. Yeah.
but he's still one of the greatest strikers of his generation, and he still manages to get on balls in the box. So at some point, not this week, but watch out for Luis. I think Alonso Martinez is a decent pick against Cincinnati. I don't have him right now, but I might look at that. I think Kuipers is an amazing pick, and I probably will work him in if Joseph is not available. I think that's probably my next fallback there.
Ashley.
Bouanga. It's so nice to have him 2 weeks in a row. I missed him. I like Benteke. I'm gonna give you a non-Messi team first. Just because you never know anymore. I think it's more likely he plays since it's a home CCC game, but I don't know.
Benteke is another iffy one though, right? Isn't he coming back from injury right now?
I believe so.
He was injured last round, yeah.
Yeah. And so assuming they're all healthy, non-Messi picks are Benteke, Bouanga, and then hear me out. I talk about this relatively often. Joveljic. I love I'm playing my former team for the first time at my new home striker. Chicho Arango is a great vengeance striker. I want Joveljic to be that was a messy transfer. They never gave him, in my opinion, a fair run out. I mean, there was obviously a reason I'm not a professional soccer coach, but when it comes to fantasy, that man produced. He was one of the best off the bench fantasy players that I've ever seen in as long as I've been playing. And he's young. Usually you say that about like Juan Delowski, right? Like and Kai Kamara, but not such a young, talented player like Joveljic. And his goals have come at home. He has played better at home. The Galaxy suck. I think he might be a less chalky pick. And where I'm at in the rankings right now, and that's something we kind of haven't dove into too much yet, Reed, but we probably should, is picking the chalk isn't going to help me now. I need to start climbing and do something different. And I think that picks like that are the way to do it, and random, different captains, which I'm really bad at. I only go chalk with captains, but I just, like I said earlier, I just love the drama, and so I think that Jovic might be a good source for that. But then obviously, if Benteke's hurt, he's a no. Messi, if he starts, I make sure I already know I have the budget for that. And then I like Brian White if he starts too. I don't think he will. They benched him before. I think that it's unlikely he'll travel across the country. We know he'll play in that game because he was rested midweek or on the weekend. I'm sorry. So I think it's unlikely he plays back home in Vancouver, but it's a conference game, so maybe. And if not, I agree. I like the San Jose striker picks, assuming they're healthy. There's a lot of I like strikers a lot this week too, but there's a couple of question marks on some of the people that I like the most. So
I will say, if you want to pick against the Galaxy defense, you might look at Scheller in midfield.
Sure.
His expected numbers are twice as high as Jovic's right now. Like, and it's early season, and that'll even out.
Those
I like
numbers
Jovic as a player, but like
don't account for hatred though.
Yeah,
those numbers
that's
don't
true.
factor.
He's been
Spite.
Yeah.
Spite is not factored into those, but I like the shout. I do like that a lot.
I really don't have anybody else to add. I mean, you guys covered most of what I was going to take. I mean, maybe I'll throw Navarro in there just to talk about it. He's been putting up some good numbers. Hasn't. He almost had a goal last week. It's okay.
Almost numbers. We're giving away almost numbers now.
We'll see.
Those are called expected goals, and they're valid.
Okay.
See, there we go. It's just those things. But I mean, this one's kind of it's a betting against DC thing. We mentioned Jordy already, and so I'll throw Navarro in there. Surridge, I'll throw Surridge in there. I mean, had that blowout last week that he was going in there. This week we did not talk about Atlanta defenders or goalkeepers, and so there's a reason for that. So are we going to see that kind of production again? Probably not. But
what do I always say? Nobody ever scores a hat trick twice.
That's right.
In a row.
And so. I mean, especially if you're looking at going with Mukhtar, like, are you going to want to double up on that attack? I don't know. I don't know if it's that good of a game on the road that we can see. But I mean, I'll throw his name out there. I mean, it's definitely someone I think as you're going through who you might want to fit in, how your budget works. If you come to him, like, I get it. I absolutely see why you might have that.
I'd like to
early game.
Apologize to Rafael Navarro because he does have 2 goals in his last 3 games. So my apologies to him.
Thank you. I look at.
Well, I didn't even notice.
Well, he had that goal called back last week as well, which I agree with.
Oh, so okay, almost 3 out of 3.
It was almost 3, but he definitely did a push. So it is what it is. But yeah, I think we got a lot of great forward options right there. But as always, as you've mentioned, John, it's messy watch. It's always messy watch, especially when it is like he has to play in this game. I mean, it's at home.
Yeah.
If they don't win, they're out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he has to play.
They have to score 3, isn't it? Like, it's not like a 1 goal differential, isn't it?
Yeah, they're down 2. They're down 2.
Yeah.
So they've got to bring it hard against the Vancouver team, as you mentioned, Ashley, who has been doing. I mean, putting Vancouver up for sale seems to be the best thing that's ever happened to Vancouver.
I guess so. I know.
So we shall see. All right, well, let's wrap everything up with our captain's picks. So, as always, Ashley, if not Messi, then who?
Maybe I'm getting too excited, but I think I'm going back to my guy, back to my home, where I feel safe, and that is Denis Bouanga. If not Messi, I think Denis. And to be fair, it's not just because he put up a good round. I watched the game, and he was getting in the box. He looked more like the guy, to steal from John, this game than I've seen before. There's still something off with that team. They still aren't finishing the way that we're used to. Personally, it's hard for me to say this. I think some of it is Olivier Giroud And the fact that he's just a waste of space, great to look at, but waste of space. But again, not a professional soccer coach here. So like I said, there's just something off when you watch them that is affecting even the best LAFC players that we've seen. But it looked a little better. It looked a lot better, I should say, this past week against St. Louis, who's a decent team, who's a good team. So I would put St. Louis and Houston in similar brackets as far as defensive competence, and also Ben Lunt from St. Louis had the game of his career against LAFC, and I don't know that I think the same will be said for Houston. So I think if not Messi, then Denis.
John.
Yeah, I mean, Bouanga would be probably my go-to after Messi. Benteke, if he's looking fit and starting, although I still wouldn't trust his minutes enough to captain him, I think. I think Kuipers is probably where I would go next. None of the midfielders really seems that dominant. Usually I prefer capping a midfielder over a forward, just because like there's less of the boom and bust thing, right? You get a few bonus points. But in this case, Orlando actually has a slightly worse defense than Houston, and I think people are sleeping on that a little bit. And Kuiper's numbers have just been spectacular all season, and I just love that pick this week.
They've got the clean sheets, John.
Yeah.
Shrug, whatever. And I tell you, I wish I was getting the sound bites from this episode. That's some good ones. I strongly question if we're going to see Messi get serious minutes in this week for what's going to have to happen there. So I think this is very relevant for, if not Messi, who, especially with Miami playing an early game, that's going to be a very easy question to answer, because I don't think anyone, well, maybe you might have an early game captain. So I agree.
Disagree with your Messi read, by the way. I don't have intel on this, but
okay.
I think like Messi rested before this game, right? Because he's going to have to go all out of Vancouver, but Messi wants to play soccer all the time. Like that's all he wants to do. He doesn't want to come off ever. And like once he's not resting, like this is the game after the game, right? And so he doesn't rest anymore. I think he's going to go 90.
Okay, so you think we could see 180 from him for the Wednesday game and the?
I would not be at all surprised.
Okay. Well, that's why he's there. I mean, the man's in my lineup. I'm not taking him out of the lineup, but we'll see. I mean, it's getting to some pressure time. So that if not Messi, who? That's why we're here. I think you're right. Bouanga is the chalk second pick if not Messi. I think you could also make a good case for Mukhtar as an away player, with some of the clicking that's happening, with what we expect from Atlanta's defense usually being poor. I think he makes a case for that there. And I think John already made a case for what we might expect from San Jose that makes Espinoza a tempting target as a captain. So I think if you don't want to have a chalk captain, as you were saying, Ashley, with depending on where people are with their points and what they're doing, if you want to move away from the chalk, if Messi plays, it's Messi, because that's almost too risky to lose out on if you're even trying to move
he's
away.
The exception. Yeah, but I think it's too risky to lose out on.
If it's not Messi, I think if you were looking for a differential captain, that made sense. Not a differential just to try to be that. And I think Mukhtar and Espinoza are absolutely in there. Love the Kuipers. Shout out. I've seen people mention Evander. I think he's a little bit too risky. Especially coming back up from the rough game. I mean, he could get a goal, and that would be great. Maybe a goal and assist, and that would be fine. But that
would be great.
It would be.
You got 4 points last week.
I'm just talking about
sounds
captain.
Lovely.
It would be fantastic. But you're hoping for more from some of these other guys with their contributions. So, but yeah, I think Bouanga's the chalk one, but I think you would definitely do Espinoza and Mukhtar would be right up there as other potential alternatives for your Messi captain, and we'll see if he comes out there. Going to chat. Yeah, a lot of Rwanda, Mukhtar, Mihailovic. I get that is on the road, but I definitely see why you might go with that. Chicho's potential one. Messi. Yep, I think we touched on everything here. So yeah, we'll see what ends up being, and this is going to be the most fun Messi watch that I've seen. Where we've got John's like, no, he's going to be here. So we'll find out. I will trust John.
I guess we need to mention, because we didn't, Chucky hasn't even come up in this at all, but like if we're liking Dryer against Dallas, like we should probably be liking Chucky as well. And if nobody's even thinking of him, maybe that's your differential. That's a pretty easy one.
I think that's fair. Very fair.
I do too.
Throw him on the list. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us tonight. We hope that you've gotten some good information to help prep your team. Let's wrap up as we do every week with plugs. I'm starting out with John, your secret project.
Yeah, so part of the reason why I wanted to come on this week is that since I left The Athletic last year, I've been working on building a soccer startup. It is going to be extremely fantasy relevant. Anybody who is into fantasy MLS is going to love what we have been building, and I'm super excited to show it to you guys this week. I'm not going to tell you what it is right now because I want you all to, follow me on social media and read the announcement this week, and it'll be exciting, and hopefully you'll hear about it through all the MLS channels because, yeah, it's coming soon to you.
And where can they follow you on social media?
I'm on Blue Sky, johnSpaceMuller.com. Yeah, I don't know. I'm out there. I'm easy to find.
He's there. He's got a Substack. He's got all kinds of good stuff. So you can definitely find the guy. Or go to our Discord server and just at John, and you can find him right there. Ashley.
I'll plug that Discord community. I love that Discord community. It's so nice to have different people on this season on the podcast talk about how they've found it and how they've used it, what they like about it. So thank you, John, for continuing that on. And yeah, it's just a great place to kind of fill in some of those gaps. If you don't want to put in all the legwork, someone else has done it for you. Talk about a safe place for the MLS fantasy crazies. We love it over there. So
absolutely, it's been a fantastic community to be a part of. I will plug the MLS Fantasy Boss website proper. Wodu's been doing a great job in curating the content this year. Some absolutely fantastic articles. He's done a great job of getting a good lineup of guests for the show today, including John, helping getting a lot of these things organized. So be sure to go over there, check out that content. If you have a suggestion for someone who you would like to see on the show as a guest, let us know. Hit us up in the comments. Just send us a message on Discord. It's been fun to have some new faces on the show this year. And I will echo the Discord community. Be sure to check that out. It is just a great community to be a part of. Very open questions, and some of the best players in this game are at that community. Past winners of this game are in that community and are happy to provide feedback on the show or to your team, and frequently come on the show and give feedback as well. And so definitely go over there and check it out. The easiest way to get there, MLSFantasyBoss.com/Discord. So as always, we appreciate everyone coming and tuning into us. Hope you got some good information, and good luck.